Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be another My Thoughts on video, and I wanted to talk about the Age of Sigmar General's Handbook for 2019. Something that has pretty much already come out. I've ordered my copy to arrive this weekend, but I realize I haven't had a chance to talk about it in videos because I've been so busy with exams, and then I've moved to a new, I'm back home for the summer. As you can sort of tell, I'm in a slightly new room, so I haven't had a chance to talk about it. And I apologize this video isn't going out on Monday, as it typically would. I was abroad over the weekend, so I didn't get a chance to actually record the video. Sorry, hold my hands up there. But we're going to talk about the General's Handbook today, go through the various Warhammer community articles, just talk about my thoughts on what the book is bringing. We've seen some little hints earlier in previous articles and even in previous videos I've talked about the General's Handbook. But we'll also get a bit of an idea of what they're doing with the points changes, a better expansion of the various game systems that are coming, and just sort of collate everything about the General's Handbook into one place. And once I've got the book this weekend, I'm planning to meet up with some friends for some games, and there will absolutely be at least one battle report, hopefully with the new General's Handbook and all the new points, maybe even playing with the new systems coming very, very soon. So let's jump in, shall we? We're going to start off with the new addition to both the narrative and to matched play, the mercenary companies. This is something we first saw in Forbidden Power with the Greyfid Fireslayer Lodge and a Flesh Eater Court. And those armies are returning as part of these companies, and so there are 10 companies in total. We get to see all 8 of the ones that aren't those two in this article. And if you own Forbidden Power, you'll already know how this works. Mercenaries are basically allies that you take for your army. They're built around a certain amount of units. You're quite limited in what you can take, at least this article certainly implies that. There is, however, a cost to taking them. Because mercenaries can be drawn from outside your typical alliance pool, and also from outside your own Grand Alliance, you can actually do that, but it will cost you a command point on the first turn. So in the first battle round, you do not generate a command point due to the mistrust of your allies. So if you're someone who doesn't rely particularly on command abilities, or someone who maybe has loads of command loads of command points from your piles of battalions, then mercenaries will be certainly of use to you. And if you're someone who has an army that is almost complete, but you can't quite fit an endless spell, you don't have the right units available to take an endless spell, you have a very small alliance pool, or all the allies you can have are expensive, or for whatever reason, this will allow you to fill out your army at the cost of a command point, although of course, bear in mind, you can spend 50 points to get a command point back. So if you're still struggling to fill out your list, you can get yourself the additional command point that you're going to lose as a cost for taking mercenaries. So, who are the mercenary companies? I realize I've already done the explanation here. So they're taken from the allies pool, so they share that cost. So if you're taking allies and mercs, they are the same 20% pool of points available. And they're represented thematic units. So, and here's the disruptive presence. If your army includes any mercenary units, because they get the mercenary keyword, at the start of your hero phase in the first battle round, you do not receive 1 command point, which is slightly annoying, but it is what it is. So that's the only downside of taking them. Otherwise, you get a lot of freedom. So who are these mercenary companies? Well, said there are 10. The Greyfid Lodge and the Tenebrous Court. Sorry, I could not remember their name. So the first one is another death one, the Sons of the Lichmaster. This gives you a Necromancer, Zombies, Skeleton Warriors, and a Corpse Cart. So if you are playing a very elite army and just need a horde of dudes, then this is a very useful one for you. And there are also some very good thematic reasons to take it. They talk here about a city in Shyish where the living and dead fight together. So you can have Free Guild allied with the Sons of the Lichmaster. It works very well thematically for Shyish. So definitely a useful one, though it is not going to be one for a group that wants a big, powerful punch. Skeletons can be punchy in large units, but remember you only have a 20% allowance for what you can take. This is probably the best way to get dudes per point, I think, although I cannot remember every single one of these companies off the top of my head, so let's go through. There's also a secondary ability that you get for each mercenary company. In this case, you get +1 attack, whilst the units of zombies or skeleton warriors are wholly within 18 inches of the necromancer, which means, again, you can get more punch out of your pile of dudes. So, as I say, if you're an elite army that needs dudes that can come back, or you're a quite flimsy army that needs a bit more durability and survivability in some units for holding objectives or holding midboard, this is certainly going to be one for you, with a surprising amount of punch if you build it a certain way. Next up, we have the Grug Brothers, a pile of Ale Guzzler Gargants, basically just a giant pile of giants. If you're an army that doesn't take monsters, this is going to be very useful for you, and they actually do buff each other by getting close to one another, because they sort of have a sibling rivalry. So it's quite useful, although Gargants I found are not that punchy. I found in a game quite recently, I had 5 Blood Sisters one-shot kill a Ale Guzzler Gargant, or as they are for the Gargants in Gutbusters. So you can kill them quite easily in a specified build, but if you're either running a very monster-heavy list and need some cheaper ones, or you're running a very monster-light list and need access to some heavy punch, or just something tanky, this will be quite useful for you. Then we have the Order of the Blood-Drenched Rose. Blood Knights and a Vampire Lord on a Nightmare, although this image also seems to imply you can get a dragon. Blood Knights. Chunky, heavy cavalry. Anyone who's been around this channel when I've talked about Sigmar for the past 2 years at least knows I have a real penchant for chunky, heavy cavalry. This is my shtick. I love heavy cavalry. I don't know why, but I really love heavy cavalry. Even if most of them suck, I just really like them. So if I'm going to take any mercenary company, it will probably be these guys. Possibly the Grey-Feared Lodge if I can be bothered to paint a pile of dwarves as an elven player, but these guys, yeah. Because I have a Daughters of Cain army, Blood Knights, and the bloodthirsty Daughters of Cain, who also don't have heavy cav. You see? You get heavy cav and magic in your Daughters of Cain army, which is brilliant, and your Blood Knights get a nice pile of cheap infantry to support them, as well as some nice light cav in the form of Doomfire Warlocks. Yeah. If Blood Knights weren't so prohibitively hard to use as terms of the kit, then I'd absolutely snap this up. And as it turns out, I'll probably end up doing a conversion. Maybe convert my old Dragon Princes if I've still got them lying around somewhere, make them into Blood Knights, and run this, because I just have a real fondness. And they even get immunity to Battle Shock. Convenient. Then you have Nimyard's Rough Riders, Pistoliers, Outriders, and a free guild general. This is a really nice one. Because a lot of armies don't have light cav, and even less armies have missile cav. So Chaos in particular, with the exception of Marauder Horsemen, and I suppose you could argue Seekers of Slanesh, don't really have any light cav at all. And Marauder Horsemen are pretty much the only missile cav that I know. Other factions do have them, but Death doesn't really have any missile cav. So Death could certainly get a benefit out of these guys as missile cav, and a free guild general can also be quite punchy. So pretty useful, and they also get the ability to outflank, which is very, very useful if you need distraction cav. So again, another one that I like the look of, and it's something I would probably use in a Free Cities army, if I was building the army of a free city. Although, having said that, I'd probably buy a full free guild army rather than do this. So this could be a nice introduction. You then have the Black Smoke Battery from the Ironweld Arsenal, which is cannons, organ guns, cogsmiths, and gyrocopters. This is self-explanatory. Do you need artillery? If yes, take this. And even the gyrocopter and gyro bomber that you can take can actually buff the cannons and organ guns by doing scouting for them. So a nice synergistic one. I can see a lot of fun for armies if you are a fan of dwarves, a fan of artillery, and you have access to neither of those. Or you just want to do something to go alongside your shiny hell cannon and you play Chaos Dwarves. I don't know, you might. Then you have Skrug or Skraug's Menagerie. Chaos Gargant, so a nice monstrous arcanum-y, beasts of chaosy sort of thing. So this mercenary company is Actually, hang on. Is it just him? Did I misread that? No, a menagerie of bizarre chaos beasts, though they don't really show them off here. They do talk about the Furies from Warcry, and possibly other things as well. So the Chaos Cargo for this mercenary company can use the basic command abilities from the core book as if it were a general, but they must be used on units from the same mercenary company. So I'm assuming there'll be some more beasts coming out for Warcry, like the Big Buzzard, that will synergize with this as well. So I'm not sure what this is quite going to be. It's not for me personally, but I can see it being very thematic and fun. Then you have the Rampagers, a Dark Oath group. This is really interesting because it's Marauders with a Dark Oath War Queen or Dark Oath Chieftain, but they're all classed as being a Dark Oath Exiles group, which means that Marauders are probably going to end up in the Dark Oath faction. And that's a win. That's a win. I've been wanting this, talked about this in my 5 years anniversary video. I like this a lot. So if you are someone who again needs nice, cheap, chaffy infantry that can also pack a punch, these guys would be a pretty safe pick. And I suspect that if you're playing a Free Guild army that is not of Shaiish, so the Lichmaster one is not quite so thematic, these guys will make sense as well. Or you want to sort of establish that they're just getting established. This free city has been a barbarian tribe for so long that is trying to reform and civilize itself, but not all of its elements are. Then you could go with that. And they've got the extra rule that means they get a free move at the start of the game. Nice and fun. Then you have the Gut Stuffers. Yeah, Man-Eaters. We knew we were going to get Man-Eaters. This just makes a giant pile of sense. It's a few units of Man-Eaters and a Fire Belly. Nice and tanky, can shoot, decent melee punch, and the Fire Belly also provides you with magic. So a really solid core, though you won't get much for your points because, of course, they're ogres, they're expensive, you've got a 20% cap. Keep that in mind. They also get reroll charges, but they must charge if they can. And there you go. That is all of the mercenary companies. It was Greyford Lodge and the Tenebrous Court in Forbidden Power. Good grief, I've been banging on for 12 minutes and we've only just got through mercenary companies. So yeah, mercenaries is a rule I'm really glad to see because it just allows more flexibility and narrative theming in the game. I personally love the Blood Knights one because I'm a huge sucker for chunky heavy cavalry, but I can see places for the artillery in certain armies, for the marauders, for the skeletons, the giants, the ogres. There's a place for nearly everything here if it's really your thing, so absolutely approve, but we must move on. Next, let's talk about meeting engagements. This was the new matched play game system, which is designed for 1,000 point games. So, here's how they work. They are matched play games, but are also kind of flexible, with a few changes to your army selection and deployment, as well as the battle plans, because the board changes size typically. So, army selection. You split your force into 3 groups, and the entire army must be a minimum of 1,000 points. Oh, sorry, must be 1,000 points dead, though I'm sure your opponent can give you a little bit of leeway if you're feeling nice. So, here are all the rules. The first force you choose is the Spearhead. This is what you deploy. It's up to 1 leader, 2 battle line, and 2 more units. It doesn't have to be anything, though, of course, if you've got nothing on the table at the start of a battle round, I do think you lose. So, or at least that's a rule in 40k, or it was. It might not be a rule in AOS, I can't remember. So, you don't have a lot of options, but you can get something. Then you have your main force, which has a leader or 2, 1 or more battle line units, up to 1 Behemoth, and then whatever else you like. So that's where the bulky stuff is going to be. However, you can also wait to the end for the rear guard, which may have a leader, may have a Behemoth, may have up to 2 artillery, up to 2 battle line, and up to 2 other units. Again, you can take nothing at all. The entire force can be concentrated just in that main body. You don't need anything here or here, just here in the main body. So it's a real tactical choice of whether you front load, you back load, or you mid load your army, or you split it up evenly. Additionally, extra rules, you cannot have more than 2 units from the same war scroll unless they're part of a battalion, of which you're only allowed one battalion. So, for example, if you have a battalion that calls for 4 units of something, that's fine, but you cannot take 4 units of something individually. That's not allowed. Units in the Spearhead may only be taken at their minimum size, meaning that if they are in a unit that benefits a lot from synergy, then it's not really going to work in terms of like large unit synergy like skeletons and zombies. In the main body, battle line units and the rear guard, battle line units in the main body can be taken up to double minimum size, so typically this will be 10 or 20 models, and then anything in the rear guard can be taken up to double its minimum size. Otherwise, you must stay at your minimum for all units that aren't battle line in the main body, at least I assume so. If you take allies, you're only allowed one. If you take an endless spell, you're only allowed one. So you are quite limited in what you can take, but it also means that you have to be quite smart in terms of making the most out of what your army can do. And I think this is a really good system for teaching players not to just net list. Because a lot of net lists call for really focusing in on a very specific type of unit for a tournament. So giant blocks of witch elves is one that I know is quite popular. And I'm sure there are many others across other armies that you can name if you are so familiar with them. For example, the now quite famous Skaven list, which has like 5 Vermin Lords. Obviously, they're all different types of Vermin Lords, so it kind of works around this system anyway, but then you've got the leader limit. So you can't just be spamming out heroes because you're only allowed a maximum of 4 in your entire army. You can't rely on your Behemoths because you've got a total of 2 in your entire army. So you are quite limited. And I think this will be good for teaching people the game very quickly, but also having a lot of deep nuance that tactical-minded gamers can get a lot of benefit out of. So I really like this as an idea. And if you need a reminder, there's a full cap of what you're allowed to do. So deployment, there's a battle map here. So your spearhead is deployed in your half of the board, typically. And then at the on turn 1, is it the end of turn 1? At the end of your first turn, your main body comes down, so you can't lose if you don't have a spearhead. And at the end of the second turn, your rear guard comes down. So you will have most of your army very, very quickly, but you won't have all of it until the end of the second turn. And sometimes games of Sigmar can be over by turn 3 or 4. So you won't get a lot of use out of your rear guard. It's a really fascinating system, and I can't wait to try it. They've suggested the board be a little bit smaller. So instead of being 6x4, which is 72 by 48 inches, they've recommended up to 4x3. So it's about half the size of a standard board, which should make for some very fascinating games on this smaller scale. I very much want to try meeting engagements, and I feel like they'll be quite popular at gaming stores. They also talk about warm-up games for tournaments and all things like that, or maybe even seeding matches if you need to get people seeded or grouped or pooled or whatever. You can use meeting engagements as a quick playoff system. So, very much approve of this. Can't wait to try it out. Not sure if I'll do it immediately, but definitely going to give it a go. Right, next up, let's talk quickly about the rest of narrative play. Whoops, close that. So narrative play, obviously, is something that I'm more interested in, although I know it's not for everybody. And one of its big, shiny things this year is Streets of Death city fighting. Why is this not in match play, is my first question. They don't talk about it really that much, but it does suggest that you've got alleyway fighting, building fighting, burning down buildings, garrisons perhaps, infiltrating, new game mechanics allow for sieges, garrisons, and all sorts of fun things like that. So this is going to be a game that criminally small numbers of people are going to play. City fighting is one of the most fun things to do if you have the terrain for it. My experience with 40k has told me this. And from a narrative perspective, the mindset of fighting through city streets just really appeals to me. It really, really does. So I'm gonna play a Streets of Death game or two. At the very least, this system needs to be played. It's criminal that it's stuck in narrative play, but I think you could probably combine it with the siege mechanics if you so desired. So if you're playing a narrative campaign, start with a siege battle. If you win it, play a Streets of Death battle. If not, maybe play a breakout sort of battle plan. Something like that to try and break the siege if it fails the first time. Lots of fun things like that. Really want to give this a go. Arcane objectives. New flavor for objectives. So 11 arcane objectives available, which can do all sorts of things. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Artifacts to defend yourself, healing, traps for explosions, doing damage. Lots of different fun things going on there. If you remember to use them, because I kind of forget the objective rules exist sometimes, definitely give them a go. I'm not sure I will, but For the right game, I could definitely see it. Then we have Regiments of Renown. So this will allow you to upgrade units. We've seen before we had narrative special rules for the battlefield and maybe allowing you to create a certain unit or hero story as part of those rules. But now you have Regiments of Renown, which will allow you to pick out very specific units and give them buffs. So for example, Battle Drill means that you get a nice big buff for a turn, which is nice. Or maybe they've got some special armor, so they're more defensive, but they're also slower. Really suitable for example, the Duardin army. Or perhaps if you've got stupid fast cav, and you don't really care about losing a bit of move. My Ishleyan Guard would absolutely love this, because then they'd have a 3-up save unmodifiable all the time. Or a 2-up on the charge. Unmodifiable, and they'd still be moved 12. Oh, that makes me sick to think about. That's not fun. You can also do it by randomness if you want to do that, but I think people will get some fun out of this if they want to do this sort of stuff. I appreciate narrative play is not for everybody, but I think it's got a lot of fun in it regardless. Next up, open play, probably the one that gets the most and also the least play. So, what they've mainly done here is add a couple of new game systems. The first is a battle plan generator, a nice small close quarters game. Again, these are designed for the meeting engagement boards. 30 to 36 by 40 to 48, allowing you to play games on a smaller scale if you don't have space or maybe don't have time. Exactly what they offer is, well, you can see for yourself. Each battle plan has a deployment map, an objective and twist, so if you've used the open ward cards before, you'll recognise this. And again, they talk about tournament warm-up games. You pick a map, roll up an objective rule, and then you draw a twist, which is completely fine. It's obviously going to play very similarly to a regular game of Age of Sigmar, because it's got no unique mechanics like Streets of Death does, or the same army selection mechanics that Meeting Engagements does, because it's open play, you can do whatever you like. Excuse me. But it should be nice and fun if you're just wanting to throw armies together on the fly. And if you are wanting to do that, welcome to the Open War Army Generator. If you can't be bothered to write a list the day you turn up for a game, and yes, my friends at home, you know exactly who you are, then how about do this? Roll 2d6, maybe a few times, and generate some stuff. Or draw some cards up to a points limit of what you're allowed to take. And go from there. So you might roll, in this case, 26, which gives you a champion and an endless spell. So it means that you can really quickly generate a list without taking the time to overspec it and worry about points costs, because it's open play. It allows you to quickly build a list if you want to roughly balance a game, but not super balance it. So if you're someone like in 40k who plays with the power system, which is more difficult to balance, I would argue, than the point system due to the high customizability of some armies, I think this is something you'll be quite useful for, and it's also useful if you're wanting to grab bag a narrative campaign. So you want to do a Path to Glory campaign, but rather than generate using the follower tables, you just have a random starting army, you draw your card, you play it, and yes, I did the dual disc thing. You play that, that's your army to start you off, bang, boom, off you go. Could be quite fun for that, and they do say there's more going on there, but we must move on now to matched play. This is probably the bit that most people really care about, so I'll try and slow down. All this article is basically point changes. It's not a comprehensive roster of point changes. There's a full booklet coming with the General's Handbook that will be providing the full roster of point changes. The main change for match play is meeting engagements, but this is probably the bit that most of you care about the most. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't play most of these armies. In fact, my entire focus is Grand Alliance Order in terms of armies that I actually play. So, I can't say any more or less than that. And you should also know there are some armies here who are perhaps conspicuous by their absence. You'll notice as I go through this article, I think, that Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven are both missing, and they are currently regarded as pretty top-tier armies. We saw this last year. Daughters of Cain and Deepkin received no changes, despite the fact that they were both powerful armies at the end of AOS 1 when the General's Handbook 2018 came out. They've been changed this year, but I'll be interested to see if they do something to address the power of Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven if it carries on in the meta after these changes come into effect. So, Let's have a run through. So, Beasts of Chaos. Gores get cheaper, which is nice. And Ungors, well, they were probably what was being taken more, so now Gores are a more viable option. And Zangors have also changed as well. The Zangor Enlightened have gone up in cost so that they're less auto-pick, because I have heard before that Tzeentch had problems with Zangor being a bit OP, so nerfing the Zangor down to balance up with Dragon Ogres and Bulgors is probably a good idea. Tzeentch is getting a lot of cheapening, mostly to its horrors, and Flamers are also coming down as well, which is nice. Everchosen, Archaon himself is unchanging, but Varangard have dropped ever so slightly. Varangard is so exceptionally expensive, but this might help. You've also should note that a lot of the... no, that's Nurgle, sorry. This means that if you manage to free up enough points per block of Varangard, you could actually get some cheaper stuff in there as well. Don't know, not really looked at Everchosen all that hard, though I would consider some Varangard sometime. Nurgle, it's basically the mounted mortals that are getting the cheapness, which is probably a good idea because I don't think anyone runs them, so fair. Slaves to Darkness, Chariots and Marauder Horsemen are coming down in cost, and I have a friend who rather likes Chariots, so I think this might be their final incentive to get that army. Moving into Death, Direwolves have been nerfed ever so slightly because they were just a bit too efficient when compared to Skeletons and Zombies, and Graveguard have dropped in price. It also can be taken in different sized units. Blood Knights have also dropped in price to about the cost of a unit of Stormcast Paladins. 200 points for 5. 2 units of Blood Knights in that mercenary company. I'd have to take the Vampire Lord. Ooh. Keep an eye on that one. Keep an eye on that one for my mercenaries. Night Haunt. Grimghast Reapers have been nerfed ever so slightly so that they're not just so much of an auto pick. And Lady Olinda has come down in price because, well, as a Mortarks go, she's kind of flimsy compared to the other 3, so that's probably fair. But yes, you'll notice their Flesh Eater cults didn't come up, so I don't know if they're going to do anything to Flesh Eaters or they're going to wait for the meta to settle down before they make a final choice. Beastclaw Raiders are getting changes of decrease across the board, so Stonehorns are coming down, Mournfangs are coming down, Thunder Tusks are coming down. Not the Beast Lord version, the Beast Riders version, which is just your standard monster, but it's a welcome change nonetheless because Beastclaw are expensive. Iron Jaws, the Mega Boss on Warcrusher are coming down, as is Gordrak, Ardboys, and Brutes, which is probably a good thing because Warcrushers cost something like 460 points base. So if you can get it down to 400, it's a more feasible ally to a 2k destruction army. Bone Splitters and Gutbusters are unchanged, which is kind of surprising, because Bone Splitters are quite an old army now, and Gutbusters are, well, they're still the basic army. They haven't been changed at all, and they're not super stellar, so I thought they might have seen a small amount of change there, but maybe that's an indicator that they're going to redux them, just like they are doing Sylvaneth whenever it gets through whatever customs blockade is blocking it. Then we get into Order. This is kind of more my shtick. So, Bleak Swords have come down for Darkling Covens, and the Sorceress on Black Dragon is now 260. So, that's not a huge change, but it's a nice little upgrade nonetheless, should free up a few more points, and Darkling are quite cheap, model for model, so you might be able to sneak in another unit if you're taking big hordes. And these guys do have allegiance abilities in their General's Handbook, so hopefully they'll be at least somewhat viable, because I've always struggled with my Darkling. They're a bit too flimsy. My big block of Executioners just melt, and I haven't got enough Bleak Swords and Dread Spears to really make the army work. Daughters of Cain, aka probably the joint/second joint most powerful army in the game. Yeah, big nerfs. Witch Elves have gone up in cost by 20% to 120 points for 10, and Hag Queens have gone up in cost by 50%, going from 60 points to 90. This means that your standard 90 Witch Elves with a Hag Queen has suddenly gone up in price by 200 points. That's going to sting. That's going to sting quite a lot for Daughters players. And I am a Daughters player, and I'm quite happy to see these nerfs come in. I'm not against armies being powerful, but I'm not a fan of playing at super OP builds, and I'm glad that they've acknowledged that Witch Elves were kind of running roughshod over a lot of things. They've also changed Kinnerai Heartrenders, so they're a bit more expensive now because they were very useful as allies. But they've discounted Bloodstalkers, the Snake Archers, so they're now the same cost as Blood Sisters, assuming Blood Sisters themselves don't change. So that's a nice thing to see because they were probably one of the weakest units in the army, so that's fine by me. I think Daughters will still be a strong army, though it may see a pivot from Witch Elves into Sisters of Slaughter in order to save some points. Although Sisters of Slaughter do have one less attack per model when they're near to heroes, they do have the extra pile-in range. So we will see what they decide to do with that in terms of making the best build, whether it goes into all Melisai, whether Marathi shows back up again for her magic and buffs, we will have to see. Devoted of Sigmar, Witch Hunters have come down, which is fair enough. Dispossessed, Dwarven Warriors have dropped a little bit. Have gone up a bit, but the Rune Lord, the Unforged, which I believe is the new name for the Slayers, and the Warden King have all been discounted, which is obviously very nice because dwarves have usefulness like destroying wizards and being tanky. So, good. Eldritch Council, which is, of course, your Swordmasters of Hoeth. The main thing is that Swordmasters have slotted down in price, which is good because now you see 30 Swordmasters will now fit in an ally slot. And some endless spells have also changed in cost. We'll get to that a little bit later. So good to see. Free Peoples. The Free Guild General on Griffin has gone up, which is a shame, but okay. But Demigryph Knights and Greatswords, two of the chunkiest units in that army, have come down in cost. Meaning that if you're running the detachment system and you want some actual punch to go with your shooty troops, which I personally would if I played Free Guild, then you can do that. Idoneth Deepkin. Morsar Guard, which is the Spear Cav, have gone up in price by 10 points per block, and I know Morsar were one of the more powerful units in Idoneth, so I think that's a welcome change. However, the Achillean Leviathan and both sorts of Namati have come down in price. The Leviathan is widely regarded as one of the worst units in Idoneth, which is a shame because it's a giant doom turtle, so hopefully it becomes at least somewhat usable, and Namati at 140 points per 10, and with the sort of incentive for you to hoard them in large units for soul renders and for Lotan, them getting cheaper is going to be very interesting to see if the builds switch from almost mono Achillean to mono Namati with Isharan, or maybe they just start crossing between the two. I'm interested to see that because my army of Idoneth is pretty much entirely Namati themed, with only a few elements of Achilleans and Isharan, so I'm absolutely down with that. Caradron Overlords, the Gun Hauler, the Frigate, and the Ironclad have all come down in cost. Caradron are also regarded as one of the weaker armies in the game right now, and they've also seen reductions to the Sky Wardens and the Grunstock Thunderers. That's 5 units have dropped in price in that army. That should tell you that Caradron was solid enough, but as Battle Tome era armies go, they're one of the weaker ones, so I hear. So, good to see, because they are really cool thematically, so it's good to see them getting a bit better balance. The Order Draconis, the Dragon Lord, has gone up, but the Dragon Blades, which is the Dragon Princes, have come down, which is cool if you like that sort of stuff. Sadly, no change to Order Serpentis, which is sad, because I like my cold ones. Phoenix Temple, you can now take the Phoenixes without the Anointed, which is cool, so you can get them into your army much more easily. Scourge Privateers have had a huge discount on Blackheart Corsairs in a Horde. Blackheart Corsairs are a powerful unit if you can get enough of them to stay alive for 5 minutes. So, nice change. Seraphon, I'm assuming these guys will get redone very, very soon, but for now, Saurus Guard and Saurus Warriors have both come down in cost, and Skinks have gone up, presumably because everyone was spamming Skinks and not taking Saurus. Meanwhile, the Stegodon and Troglodon have come down, which means that you can have more monsters, hopefully leading to more diverse Seraphon lists. Stormcast. So, Evocators have gone up, and the other types of Paladins have come down. This is a good thing, because before they all got to 200 points, and Evocators by comparison to Paladins were absolutely insane. This change is welcome, thank you very much. They've also done another set of discounts on the Vanguard units. They discounted Paladors and Hunters in the previous General's Handbook. In the previous Battle Tome that they released for the Stormcast Eternals. They rebalanced them there, and I think they made some changes to Raptors with Hurricane Crossbows as well. So now, all of them have come down, which is going to make my Vanguard-themed Stormcast army very, very happy indeed, and may even free up a little bit of space to maybe sneak in one more unit, or maybe an endless spell if I had a Knight Incantor on the board. Wanderers, a very small change for Sisters of the Watch. Wild Riders and Wildwood Rangers have also come down. Tamerkan's Horde and the Chaos Dwarves Legion of Asgore are unchanged, but the Exalted Greater Demon of Khorne has come down, and the Mourngul has also come down if you are looking at all the Forge World stuff. Finally, with the Endless Spells, so the Geminids have gone up in price, quite dramatically in fact, because they are quite powerful, but the Purple Sun of Shyish has halved in cost. It's now 50 points for a Purple Sun. Now it might actually see play, because 100 points for the Purple Sun was nonsense. It was nonsense. It was so expensive. So, yeah. We'll see how they shake out with the new Endless Spells as well. So I look forward to seeing how the Endless Spell meta shakes out. And that, after 35 minutes of talking, good grief, is my thoughts on the General's Handbook for 2019. I apologise that this video is late. I apologise that it took me so damn long to talk, because it's a very, very big topic to get through. There's so much going on in this book, but I'm really excited for the new General's Handbook. The meta was probably going to get very stale without it, because Flesh Eaters and Skaven and Daughters were running over mostly everybody. So I hear though Idneth and Nurgle and Death can definitely hang, not every army can. So these armies being changed by the points changes is absolutely welcome, and I hope that the new meta has a slight downgrade in the powerful armies so that the weaker armies can come up and we have a more diverse metagame. It won't be perfectly balanced, never is, but I'm hoping for a more diverse metagame nonetheless. As for the other changes, the Mercenary companies are a fabulous addition, and I'm absolutely going to invest in those. MIDI engagements is a great idea for quick games, as is the Open War Army Generator, and the Battle Plan Generator wouldn't hurt either. If you are more narratively minded, I urge you to play Streets of Death. I haven't played it yet, obviously. My handbook doesn't arrive for a few more days, but I'm going to be playing it if I get the terrain, because I'm building my free city board next year, hopefully. So just play that mode, because city fighting is so fun. Just do it. Just do it. Anyway, that's everything, at last. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of the General's Handbook in the comments down below. I'll be putting out a video next week talking about Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse, since that is on its way back and is looking very, very fun indeed. So I look forward to talking about that with you very, very soon. For now, thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis. This has been my thoughts on the General's Handbook for 2019. See you all again. Bye for now.